Very good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for joining in for today's open house session. So for all those of you who are new and who haven't attended our previous session, so this is actually a follow-up session. We had our previous session on communication for fundraising, and post that we did give some amount of time in case any of you wanted to go back and start working on the key takeaways that you all had from that session. So today, broadly, there are a couple of, objectives is one, to answer all of your burning questions that you have, but largely around also how do you prepare donor-ready pitch decks, presentations. So in case you'll have any questions around that. Second, if in case you'll have any existing pitch deck that you all are already working on, and in case you'll want to ask Harish, our speaker, so we could also have some time for that, wherein you all can ask your specific questions. And third as well, we could also share some sort of references. Just some, yeah, sort of references that help you package your information in a more crisp manner, especially documents that you do share with the donors. So this is largely how we've planned this session. It's going to be very free flowing. It's going to be very engaging. Please do participate. You can raise your hands or also leave your questions on the chat, and we'll ensure we pick up each one of them. And also the questions that do come up from this, we would be happy to collate all of them and share it as an FAQ with all of you post the session. I'll just take a minute more to introduce our speaker once again for all those of you who are new, and then I'll hand it over to just a second. Hope you all can just see my screen. Just a one slider introducing Harish, but Harish has been working in the social impact space as a researcher, designer, as well as content writer for the last 10 years. His work is mainly focused on building accessible and inclusive experiences stemming from user behavior studies. So he uses human-centered design principles as his framework to develop design strategies as well as improve engagement. So he holds a BFA from the School of Art Institute of Chicago, and his work has been internationally recognized as well. And he's been awarded the William Drentel Award for Excellence in Design, and this was in 2016. So a warm welcome to you again, Harish. And just a quick announcement. We will be sharing the recording with all of you post the session, as well as the FAQ document. Would be great if you all could rename yourselves. I mean, we can already see your names, but if you all could also add in your organization name, would be easier to sort of engage as well. And since it's a smaller crowd as well today, would be good if you all can switch on your cameras. So that would make the session more engaging. But yeah, over to you, Harish.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for showing up. Just a quick heads up, I would love to see your beautiful faces so that we can have a nice interaction and chat. It would really help me kind of connect some of the questions to certain faces as well. Like you were just briefed, I'm going to give you a 2-minute quick background, kind of a feel for like what's happening, what does my studio do, etc. So we specialize in mainly working in the social impact space. We work on communications, building strategies, documenting impact on ground, a series of other things around communication structures inside an organization for the stakeholders, for funders, for donors, etc. So in case you've missed out the session we were conducting the last time, you can see it in the recording. But what we thought, and we've been working with Satwa to think of different ways we can open up spaces for a little more open-ended dialogue, discussions, because a lot of the sessions are a little more controlled, right? Like there's a certain like either decks that you're looking at, certain information you're sharing, but you might have general questions around how do I approach, I don't know, a pitch deck, maybe how do I approach a funder who has a specific need of the hour and I don't know how to tackle that. While frameworks and everything sounds great, I have a specific challenge. So the idea is, we thought, what if we have open spaces, and we're planning to have more like this, which is like open-ended. You can throw some questions at us. You can kind of showcase something that you're working on just for a quick feedback or like a a clarification question. And honestly, I know it gets a little nervous to share something in front of a group, but a lot of times when we've done this, whatever you're sharing and whatever we might find an answer for might solve somebody else's challenge. So it's really cool that if you can share some of the things that you're working on, it'll be great for us to have a more targeted discussion on specific questions that you have. Additionally, we also have a lot of questions that's come from you guys, certain members who've participated in the previous workshop. I have that. So if there's a lot of awkward silence and we don't know how to get started, I have a series of questions that I can get us going on as well. Does that sound good? Someone give me a thumbs up. I see 3 faces right now. I would love to see 4 more faces. Yes, I see 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, lovely. I'm feeling it. Nice. Oh, wow. I'm getting more thumbs ups. Fantastic. Okay, great. I'm going to open up the floor for the brave first person who wants to kind of throw a question out there that they're just curious about. How do I tackle something that I'm dealing with in my organization? Or I just want to know something about communication. I'm going to open up the floor. Go ahead. Austin.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm sorry I missed the previous meeting, so I'm not sure if this was covered. And this might be a bit of a foolish question, but it's something that we're facing quite a bit as an organization.
Okay.
How would you effectively advise using cold emails as a way to reach out to potential funders? Because as the recipient of these kind of emails, it's very frustrating. It's bothersome. You don't like getting these random calls.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious to know, how would you go about that? What type of information do you feel is effective to share in something like that, if at all?
Great. In the past, whenever we've recommended or kind of recommended what to write within a cold email, the first thing we kind of throw in as a caveat is there's a high chance it goes into spam, or especially if you're using certain newsletter softwares or kind of automated kind of bulk email software, there's a high chance it does go into not their regular inbox, or it would go into promotion, etc. So even if you have spent hours crafting a stunning content within that email, just bear in mind it may not hit their inbox. There are a couple of software which I don't have straight up in my mind right now, but I will put it out there, that allows you for some reason to know whether they've opened it or not. So it gives you some sort of a data point to know how many of these members you've emailed have actually clicked and opened that email. So that's your first step. What we recommend to organizations is, if you have a strategy where you have 5 different directions you're approaching to drive engagement and some sort of an engagement with a potential donor, potential funder, this could be one of the low-lying fruit in terms of input, because it's a little straightforward for us, with a low expectation for output, where if you do have 3 other parallel tracks running where you'd rather cold call someone or show up in a kind of through a network member for a quick meeting, for a quick chat. And what we end up recommending to smaller organizations is do some sort of a, in tech, like in tech spaces, they call it A/B testing, where you test out how much time did I have to dedicate for this? What is the result I had for that? And we do like a quarterly evaluation. So first quarter, we try both and we test it out. And if we know that the stickiness, there are only 2 members opening an email, then the challenge is not how do you craft the email, it is, will it even make it to their inbox? And if it doesn't, then we don't recommend that route. And sometimes it might be a headline that can draw them in. So the more specific your kind of subject line is, that potentially helps. But in general, so far, every time we've spoken to orgs who are investing in this, it's a low hit rate and it's a low return on investment in terms of putting in too much time in it. But I wouldn't recommend, don't do it guaranteed. It's not going to give you any result. Sometimes you do kind of stumble upon certain things. One last piece is think about when does it go into their inbox. Now, I'm just going to play out a couple of scenarios. If you're writing to members, funders, philanthropists, foundation leads, and if you're dropping an email because we could get to it only on a Friday evening, that sits in there. Even if it does make it to their inbox, that sits in their inbox on a Friday evening, and there's a lower chance they're going to pick up that. And over the weekend, for all the other people who are going to drop emails, it's going to pile on. And on Monday morning, your email, even if it makes it to the inbox, would be on a lower rank. So think about over time, like when do I drop that email and what would be relevant? Now, on Monday morning is the time everyone's actually busy with their internal meetings, etc. Is that a good day to drop an email? So thinking about when to drop that email is also probably going to be useful. That was a quick snapshot of what could work. I hope that helped.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. While you guys are still thinking of questions, I have one which I'm going to pull out from the list just to get us going. Sorry, I heard someone speak. Like, was there someone?
No, Harish, I was also trying to moderate it, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Right.
So hi, Harish.
Yes, hi,
Rishabh. Sorry to cut you.
No
I just wanted to ask something. Like we send out a lot of texts to the donors, right? So what do you think is the right amount of slides or right amount of pages that we should put in a deck? So like we have one in a 10 pager deck for the organization. One is a 50 pager, a very detailed deck. So what is the right size of the deck that should be shared to the donor partner?
Okay, great. Are these donor partners already in your roster who are engaging with you? Are they potential donors?
Both. Like some are the existing ones also, but mostly the new ones.
Is this the first text they get, or have they already spoken to you in a meeting and then getting that text from you?
Sometimes it's the first text.
Okay. So the reason I'm going into these questioning is there is a phrase which you guys might have heard of, which is user journey mapping, which is essentially what is that, at what stage am I interacting in what way with any user? Now let's assume a funder, a specific type of funder. I wouldn't even blanket statement all funders, a specific type of funder who is interested in engaging on text or WhatsApp. If we look at that as a case person, what I would share in my first drop text would be very different from what I would share in a deck that's after I've had a chat with them. I would also share a very different set of information if they are already an existing donor partner with me. The reason is at every stage, the interest area and the expectation, the relationship they have with you is very different. So they're assuming you're going to send something very different. So I'll give you an example. If you already have an existing funder or donor and you send a deck which talks about who are we, what we do, what's the challenge, etc., that's going to be a set of wasted slides because they actually have already partnered with you. They know the problem, they know the work you do, they know who you are, they know your history, they know the team, they know the board members, they know everything. They want to know what's happening now, what's happening this quarter, and that gets them excited. That makes them feel like, damn, I've worked, I put the money in the right place. These guys are doing great work. So they're looking for potentially validation. They're looking for what is that impact investment looking like, etc. So that's the way I would look at it. So there, my information that I would share, the kind of content would be more around what's the work happening on ground. I'm going to get to delivery of that information later, but like just the content, the actual information would vary if you actually work with someone, if you're writing to someone who's not heard of you, you're dropping the first text out there. There is a lower chance they might actually click on a deck because it's a downloadable PDF. It might open up into a PPT or a Google Drive folder somewhere. There's a higher chance they might feel safer to click on a link of your website because psychologically, I'm not going to open a cold text PDF that's attached because that just sounds a little shady if I don't know who they are. Now, that would mean your deck may not be relevant for them. There's also another way of looking at it is on WhatsApp. Let's use that medium. A PDF is not something that you can quickly view, but a JPEG is something that you can quickly view, and you don't have to necessarily download it onto your phone. So in situations like that, you could choose which medium you want to share, but the information will be a lot more top level, context on who are we, what we're doing, and what we're looking for, I'm going to give it way lesser time than if I'm already attached and associated with an organization. That means the volume of information has to reduce tremendously. It's not like a golden number of only 10 slides, only 2 slides, etc. It's about think about logically, get into their headspace on like what do they want to understand, if they want them to even kind of engage and consider doing a call with you. So that's that. One piece around form factor, as briefly something I brought up in our last conversation. We're all very, very attached to a deck because we feel like that's the main means to kind of look professional and show something solid. Recently, like we started like exploring, if you are sending things on message on your phone viewing experience, you don't need to make those horizontal looking decks. In fact, even if you're using Google Slides, which is something that we all end up using, there's a way to just change the dimension into a narrow little vertical dimension. So think about how do you want to communicate the form factor. If you know this person's going to view it on your phone, can we just build it for your phone experience and not worry about how it's going to look on their laptop? Now, this depends on who you're sending, because you're sending a text message or sending a WhatsApp. And this is something we did with an impact documentation report that was going to government bodies to give an update on a project that A.T. Chandra was working on. Now, for them, we built a vertical scrolling, like a quick 10-page report, which I can actually try to screen share if you all give me a minute. I'll give you an understanding of what those choices were. This might help multiple people, so I'm just kind of throwing it out there. Does that work? Give me a second, yeah? Give me a second. Okay, I have some version of it. It's not the final version, but I'm just going to share it with you. Okay, are you able to see the PDF? Yeah, someone say yes. Okay,
Yeah,
lovely. Okay, lovely. So I'm going to just quickly show you what this would look like. So we wanted to give like a project overview and then jump into like certain context. And if you notice something, it's very picture heavy because we were thinking about the psyche of like government body stakeholders who don't have that much time to go into through specific content pieces. They wanted visual narratives. And we actually started sharing stories of like what's happening. And this is connected to rejuvenating water bodies in certain locations and districts in 3 different states. But we wanted to capture a couple of farmer stories in little bite-sized information. And this is like an information from a district collector. Now, you get a feel for this, and I'll explain some of the choices we made. That might help you think about what you should be sharing on a tech or any kind of mobile sharing kind of experience. Okay, you got a feel for it, right? Okay, so the choices we made was we were thinking about who cares about too much technical information on a deck viewing in a phone. They want to see evidence. They want to see actual work happening. So we're like, let's focus on how would they share that amongst themselves. They'd be capturing photos on ground and just sharing it on WhatsApp. So we said, why don't we capture photos on ground, but nicely curated, not just talk about the problem, talk about the potential impact. There was no evidence of impact. And that's something some of you guys might be facing, where you might not have impact, but you're showing what can happen. You're showing hope and potential. So we'd be choosing voices, stories that are beautifully crafted, not just to say, oh, we're suffering, or like, thanks to this, we're being helpful and whatever, like, oh, we're being helped by this organization. It's not like a Telebrands ad, right? We're not selling. We're trying to honestly communicate with a lot of respect what's happening on ground in its truest form, but in a way that's engaging for someone to quickly scroll. So information per slide reduces. Even if you have extra slides, that's okay. But if you have a lot of information on a slide, you're just going to skip it. You're not going to look at it. So think about the choices you're making, and then information for a mobile viewing. If you look at any good news reading article, you will see that there's is a certain size of your fonts, of your photos. It doesn't go smaller. While we're building it on like, I don't know, like a PPT or a Canva, whatever you end up building it on, it might feel like we can cram in more information. But remember, someone's going to see it on their phone really quickly. So if you're pitching about your organization, you're pitching about a work that you've done, think about what's going to stick. And you can also separate them as little sets of 5-page PDFs. If this person's interested in some topical work on ground, show them that. If this person's interested in scale, show them information around that. So you can also split everything. Long story short, do not feel hung up on we have to build one powerful, magical deck that will solve everything for all kinds of funder. This is something we always try to get into. It'll never give you the answer. So think of it as different challenges that you want to figure out for different types of users in different situations. Information will be different. How they absorb that information will be different.
Thank you so much.
Can you share it, please? Yes, I think. Oh, sorry. Rishabh, thanks a lot, for that question. I think a few other people have also given a thumbs up. That means it's useful. I think I can share it. I need to just vet it by the client. It is public, the report. So I don't think there's a problem. That's why I share it with you guys. But I don't know where it's held, the final report. Once I find it, I'll definitely kind of let you guys know for sure. Great question, by the way.
So, hi, I'm Trupti. I'm tuning in from Dream School Foundation. We're based in Bangalore. My question is, so I have about 7 years of experience in the nonprofit sector, and I've done fundraising for a few years. For a part of that, I plan to also get into fundraising here currently. What I've noticed is that the conversation that we have, the first conversation in the context of getting a potential donor on board, is the one that's like the make or break conversation. And I've often found myself in a conundrum because so the thing is, I've always known the work of my NGO really well, like the back of my hand. But when it comes to convincing that donor in that 10-minute, 15-minute conversation, I find myself trying to somehow kind of just give them too much information or too little or like too many stats. So I really don't know if there are like certain key or common like checkboxes, if I may use that word, that we can really look at to help us make that conversation more effective. Because I feel like that's where I at least personally feel a little lost. And I feel like it's a skill that we can learn and build on, which is why I'm asking the question. Because unlike what usually people say, it's a knack and you have it or you don't, and it's the art of conversation. I feel like it's a skill that we can learn. And so would you have some information to share on this in this context?
Trupti, were you able to be a part of the previous session that I just had?
No, I wasn't part of that session. I somehow didn't have the link to it. I just realized this call that there was another session. Okay. So I don't know how I missed that. Yeah.
I think Satwa is going to share the link again. If someone from Satwa can just share that link here as well.
Yeah.
So there's a dedicated aspect of that session where I've dissected this specific piece. Essentially, it's all about like, how can we figure out how to customize the conversation for a certain scenario. So while we might have done a lot of preparation for a boardroom meeting when they're giving us undivided attention for 1.5 hours, there's a high chance you might meet someone very interesting in a conference and you have 10 minutes while they're like serving their plate with like dal chawal to be like, hey, so what do you guys do? And you're like, and then you're going to like, so we started, and they're like, oh, it's going to be one of those. So because we're used to a certain starting point and an ending point. So we always go with the problem. Did you know that there are a bunch of facts? And then we go like, we are doing this. And there's a general flow we're used to, right? I think what we've been trying to work with orgs also is like, can we break that? Because that's not how it actually sticks on ground. Or like whenever we interact, there are certain people, depending on the stakeholder and where you're speaking and what you're saying, the priority completely shifts. So if you're speaking to someone who already knows the topic area, who's like been in that space, investing, donating in that space, they don't want to hear the problem. They know all the stats, they know the game, they know all the players in the game. They want to know what are you doing in that space so that they understand, okay, that's interesting. That direction you're taking is kind of cool as an organization. So you could jump straight into the actual work you're doing. Now, for some people, they're looking for like, okay, this is all great, but is there actual work happening on ground? Like, do you have anything to back that? So some people are interested in a little more like depth of impact, and some people are interested in how are you going to modelize it and scale it. So having these information nicely, neatly kept as little Lego blocks in your pocket, that you know that, oh, okay, you're looking for that, I have that ready. You're looking for this, I have this ready. So the first step is backstage, can we organize all these little pieces? Think of them as little flashcards if we have them. Then what you got to do, depending on the situation, we have to predictively understand what a scenario could be. So before you walk into a conference, you know that realistically you're going to get only 10 minutes with whoever's interested. You're not going to get to show a PPT deck and stuff like that. So it's going to be all verbal. So you mentally prep that. There's a high chance you're going to meet people who don't know about you or your org, but they know about the topic area because that conference is about that topic area. So you know already that what are the expectations, things they already know, things they don't know, things they are interested in, etc., etc. So based on that, you'll be already pre-picking, organizing, and prioritizing certain flashcards. And that's when you can like feel more confident to customize it. And then they might throw a curveball. You might assume they know a lot, and they might not know about the topic area you're working. And then you got to be like, okay, don't worry, I have another flashcard ready. It's like a mental flashcard. It's not a real flashcard. You could have real flashcards. That'll be also cool in certain situations. I think that's how you'd go about it. The previous session will kind of dive deeper into like, there is a sort of a framework we've started building over time. It's kind of helped orgs and ourselves craft these pitches out for organizations. So you can take a look at that. That should help. And you can also drop an email if you want kind of specific clarities after that.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. There was a question that surfaced, which is sort of similar to Rishabh, what you were asking. I'm just reading it out. And some of you guys might find that interesting. I'm going to throw it out there. The question was, what are the key components of making an excellent first pitch to a potential new donor? So I'm going to very crudely break down how we try to approach any situation like this. And you might be in that headspace because each one of you guys might be partaking in an organization. You have to understand how the org works, how the funders connected to that org want to engage with that org. So you're sort of in our boat because we also kind of team up with an organization and we need to warm up to that org really quickly. And then understand what's the psyche, what's the culture, how do we roll, how do we not roll, and then kind of think of an informed decision. The best way we've tried to hack this is speaking to existing donors and speaking to existing board members, stakeholders, external stakeholders. Now, we do this for every project we have, where we dedicate at least 1 week at the beginning of a project. If we're trying to figure out how do we pitch everything differently, how do we reconstruct the story of this org so that it's easier to connect with. Now, if you and I sit in a boardroom right now and guess this, it'll be your thoughts versus my thoughts versus your gut versus my gut. But what we try to do is, why not we pause that? We all have our biases. We all know we have our own style of suggesting how to pitch this. Can you switch it up? So what we do is, when we speak to existing donors and partners, we ask them, can you tell me, like, if you guys are rooting for our org, can you tell me what's really working? Like, when you first spoke to us, what clicked? And they'd be like, honestly, I didn't even pay attention to the deck. I actually really liked that this person was very real with me. They told me what the hardships were. Sometimes in these conversations, you learn about, oh, it was not the deck. It was actually something else. Sometimes you learn that, I remember that story you showed me. And for another org recently, they told me that they remember a visit they were asked to kind of do with them. That visit stuck with them forever, and now they're like, everyone just needs to visit once. Now, that doesn't mean your answers make everyone visit, because it's hard, I understand. And your work might not be a visit focused work. It might not be directly on ground as well. But think about what is that experience they had when they visited, and how do we get as close to that as possible when we want to translate that on a PDF, on a visual, on a WhatsApp, on a whatever, on a photograph. It might not come as close to that, but however close we can get. What we're doing is we're not thinking of what we want to talk out there. We're thinking of where is their interest area right now? What are they keen on? And how do we not manipulate our content? We're not selling. Again, just remember, we're not in advertising. We're actually doing great work. We need to find that sweet spot where their interest areas and what we do is somehow connected. That's their first step. So what components make an excellent pitch deck would be components that matter to them. If they're looking for some level of relatability, a relatable story. I brought this up in my last session as well. Like, I'm just giving an example. Like, if we talk about a specific region in kind of, I'm just giving an example right now. There are slums in Dombivli, and there's work happening in those spaces for women's health and nutrition and safety. I'm just giving an example. Now, if we're trying to talk about this space to a person who has no idea where Dombivli is, because they're from northwest, northeast of India, they're a great philanthropist, but they need some more context of, if we're so into our work that we might be like, okay, so, in Dombivli and Kalyan, there are these places. Now, they have no idea. They'd be looking up Dombivli while you're typing, while you're talking to them, because they don't even know what region you're talking about. Now, I'm just giving a very simple idea, like, for anyone to remember a story, they need to have certain hooks that is sticky enough. So how do we give them context that it's in actually Bombay, it's in this region, etc., etc. A little bit of extra context and what slums are, etc., depending on how much they know, how much they don't know. But in most of these situations, we're so into what we do as work, we want to jump to the work. So the recommendation, what we've tried to do is first understand from people what is really memorable, what people remember, etc. We also ask them, can you tell me something that was really hard to understand? Like, even now you don't understand it, but you're like, chalo yaar, okay, you all are doing good stuff. I like you guys. And they tell us a lot of like very interesting pieces. Sometimes they tell us that, listen, these guys are obsessed with impact data points. Like, their work is not going to give them good impact data. Like, I'm talking about quantitative data. So why are they so worried about that? They're doing great. They should talk about the story. I'm just giving an example. So when we hear that, we then know that if we have to prioritize the next deck content, we should focus less on, oh no, we have to gather more impact data. We need all this qualitative kind of baseline endline study. Even if we don't have it, even if it's scrappy, kuch to dal ke hum log 2-3 slides bana dete hain. But we would be focusing 80% of our energy in that, because that's something we think is going to stick for a funder. But these guys are telling us, no, for you guys, please do this and not that. So we use that as our reference, and it's a great reference point to start off with, so that it's not what we think will work. It's about what people have experienced about our decks, our pitches, etc. And the more you can get that feedback on the go, the easier it gets. Like, so then you'll have a long, like, and it'll keep changing, right? Times change, like people change, situations change. So this is something that has to keep happening. So if you found the sweet spot, 6 months later, that information, it might not be relevant. That happened after COVID, right? Like, a lot of people are giving COVID-related data points, COVID-related stories. But then 1 year later, those content pieces became a little loose. They were not as relevant. So we had to show different kind of, what is the next move after COVID? So maybe the information changes. So think about from the end user, the recipient's lens, whenever we're constructing pitches. Any questions around this further? You want to like push this, challenge some questions that you've been like trying to toy with? I'm reading through some of the chat as well here. Until then, if anybody wants to ask something, and if you show me your faces, I know you all are still there. I hope you all are not bored. Huh? Please shed some light on the effective ways to access the active requests for proposal, list of potential donors, and their contact details. Shubham, thank you for asking that question. Would you be able to talk a little bit more about what you're trying to suggest? Are you looking for a roster of information or different donors? Is that what you're talking about? While we're Shubham's figuring this out, I'm going to kind of just open up the floor for anybody else who's curious about certain things around communications. It can be beyond just the targeted pitch deck fundraising. Just how do you want to tackle certain things that you're having roadblocks within the organization?
Hi, Harish. This
Hi,
is
Amita.
Amita. Yeah. So, Harish, I think my question might take this entire discussion to a different tangent because this is a very organization specific question.
Okay.
So we work in the space of early childhood care and education, and our work includes content creation, capacity building. So we are working in collaboration with UNICEF in 3 states across India. But till date, we have been working for last 3-4 years in the field. We have not been able to raise funds through CSRs. And somehow we also have this hesitation, or it might be a myth also, that CSRs often supports organizations that are into implementation. So our work is more like background kind of work. So we actually don't know how to reach out to funders and who are the potential funders for an organization like ours.
Great question. There are 2 parts. One is, who should we reach out to? Who are these people? The second part is, they don't seem to be interested in the type of work we do. For the question around who do we reach out to and how do we get access to this, the lowest hanging fruit to start off with is to participate and partake in certain conferences where there's a lot of kind of congregation of certain impact investors, speakers. Now, I know Dasra has a series called Philanthropy Week, where there's a big conference. I know Quicksand used to have a conference called Unbox. There's another conference which is held by, there are a few of these in the game that it's a no-brainer to just kind of attend, to just get a feel for this conversation. That's easy. If you Google search this, you're just going to get whoever's like got the best SEO ratings or the hit rates or whatever, right? And that's not giving you a good justice, because no one in this CSR space is investing in figuring out how do I show up on Google search right now. So it's got to be a combination of being in spaces where you can potentially meet people either who know of CSR partners, or you can actually directly meet certain CSR partners, etc. And the second way is to find 1 or 2 members in the circuit in your network who have been engaging with CSR partners, and all you have to do is tell them, I promise you, I don't want to pitch anything to you. I just want to understand the game. I just want to understand the CSR. And this is something I've actually had close. So when we do our research, we've been interacting with international foundations, philanthropists, solo kind of entrepreneurs who are pumping in money. We have other kinds of CSR donors who are like kind of having conversations with us. The one thing they feel like even they struggle with is like everyone just like throws decks at them with the hope that someone will get it right. And they feel like, listen, someone talk to us as well and just understand what we're looking for, because certain organizations have like way too many like rules and mandates where they just officially, legally cannot allocate funds in certain topic areas or certain types of projects. There is no point, no matter how beautiful your pitch deck is or a proposal doc is, it's just not going to make that cut. So they have 3 levels of filtering system. And the first level sometimes is done by an intern who's just saying, what topic area is this person in? That's not fitting our bill. Unfortunately, even if we love this org, we can't do anything with them. So understanding that process is very useful. That's the first step. Second step is just like an RFP, like a request for proposal. You said you're working with UNICEF, correct? Now, for other organizations out here, they might be dying to work with UNICEF and they don't know how to pitch it and construct a beautiful proposal pitch for them. And you've somehow hacked it because you had a beautiful proposal that works for them. Now, that's the same challenge. Now, when we go into international foundations, we go into like UNICEF and the UN related kind of then they go into SDG goals. They have sort of like factors that influence whether they're going to consider you for a grant or not. Similarly, CSR has that same criteria. All we have to do is first understand that game, understand that criteria. Second is you have to make a choice whether you feel your program can mold into a certain space without diluting the USP of what you are and what you represent, to kind of channelize funds in certain topic areas that might not solve your entirety of what you're trying to raise, but at least you know, okay, why don't I split up my program into 2 aspects? Technically, B is delivery, and that could make the cut. So a lot of people who are actually navigating this, there's a bit of a pitching game, and I don't think it's a schemy thing. It's just an honest kind of a categorization of funds, because everyone has their own kind of return on investment they're measuring. So the CSR partner you team up with will also have like, we are hoping that we can hit these benchmarks, etc., etc. Some CSR partners are very flexible. They trust you a lot, and they're okay with qualitative impact over quantitative. Some CSR partners want scale. They want to see evidence of growth happening. You just need to probably figure out that game, and there is no secret kind of code to hack it. It's very subjective to who is trying to allocate the funds, what are their priorities, and how do we kind of fit into that space. I would say that's the first step. Instead of taking a shot in the dark to make a beautiful, it's not your pitch that's the problem. It's not your deck that's the problem. It's not your program that's the problem. It's not about how you talk about your org that's the problem. So we shouldn't blame like what we do right now and how we've constructed it, because sometimes it's like, let me like just take beautiful photographs. Maybe then they like it. It might not do anything for you, right? Like even if you get the best photographer in town and capture beautiful impact moments, etc. So I think that's how I recommend like kind of navigating that. I hope that helps.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Harish.
Of course.
It was helpful.
Anyone else? Anything that's in your mind right now? I have a bunch of more questions. I can just shoot at it. Would that be helpful? Okay, let's do that. Do we need to share our pitch deck while discussing? Great question. The one thing I want to actually point out, because we all love pitch decks, if we are trying to build a pitch deck, there's one thing I would push us to think about is, are you trying to use that deck to pitch your actual presentation, or are you sending it across later for a self-reading doc? The amount of information on a deck slide for a self-reading doc is very different from the amount of information that you need to put in when you're pitching. When you're pitching, if you have a doc that has like so much content, you're almost reading out from that doc, it's very hard to pay attention to you. I'm going to give a quick example because I think I have a deck opened up somewhere. Can you all bear with me for a second? I have something interesting to show you. Okay. This is like an old deck I just found somewhere. I'm just going to show you something cool. Okay. Long time back. Can you see something? Someone say yes quickly. Okay, I see a nod. Okay. This is one slide I'm just going to talk about. This is of an organization called Humanity. They're a global organization. They were trying to build a brand level pitch deck. You see this slide. I'm just going to go straight into slides. Don't worry about what the organization does right now. I'm just going to talk about a presentation style. When you read this page right now, this talks about the two-track model. They have a two-track model. Track one is scale, strengthen existing programs through funding and strategic support. Track two is develop and pilot new programs in underexplored issues. Now, if we're trying to share this deck with someone for them to read it, this is a kind of a slide you'd be building, because it helps that person understand what is track one actually, what is track two about. Yeah, this information, even the sizes of everything, the information on the slide is built for you to engage with it by yourself. Aram se read it. Now, I'm just going to make a copy of this right now. If we were to actually use this for a pitch right now, if I'm like kind of doing a TED talk kind of a thing, I'm going to kill, oops, 1 second. All this. I'm going to kill all this. Sorry, I shouldn't use the word kill, right? Sorry. Scrap, I guess, maybe. Okay. Now that is way easier for me to talk to you about. So I'd say we have a two-track model. So I'm going to talk about track one, and I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk about track two. I'm going to talk. Now, if you share this slide with them, they're not going to understand anything when they read it by themselves, because they don't know what track one is about. They're not going to remember what you said. But when you're pitching with this, that's harder to remember. This one's easier to remember because it's right there in front of you. So the information needs to be, again, like right now you're seeing the screen with like, it's not in presentation mode. So it'll be even easier to see when you actually have it on Zoom in. But do you get what I'm talking about? So there's a major shift in the choices you make of how much information you want to share when you're pitching in person for a conversation versus when you're actually sharing it later. So circling back to, do we need to share our pitch deck while discussing? It's completely dependent on your scenario and your situation. If you're at a coffee shop, sometimes it's kind of weird to pull out a laptop and talk. It's kind of nicer to just like talk in person and just maintain eye contact and maybe show like 2 little cards of a beautiful photograph with some information. When you open up a deck, like if you open up like a laptop, it almost feels like one of those, oh my God, you're going to take me through this entire deck. I'm looking for how many slides this deck has. So maybe a coffee shop scenario, you'd rather just like talk to them and be like, you know what, I'll send across all the information. Don't worry about it. It's a nice, intimate conversation. You build the relationship, you build intimacy, and then you kind of send that across. In another situation, you'd like them to see that deck because it's easier to talk. And then you can also share a written format version of it, or just like a white paper doc on the extra information you want to share and send that across. There are a few more questions out here. Abhishek's asked one. As CSOs, we also look at networking with other CSOs, knowledge partners. Can you share a few inputs on how we can leverage it towards fundraising? Abhishek, would you be able to kind of walk me through what you're thinking if you're still around? And then we can dissect it further. Abhishek, it's a great question. You have to now say something. Huh? Oh no. Okay. It's a complicated question. So it's, oh, you're traveling. So I have a lot of background noise. Okay, don't worry. Okay. No stress, Abhishek. It's a complicated question. I may not be able to tackle it right now, but let me just think about a simpler answer. As CSOs, we also look at networking with other CSOs, knowledge partners. Can you share a few inputs on how we can leverage it towards fundraising? I think one thing that we've been recently really pushing to explore is when we're thinking about fundraising, we talk about what we plan to do and what we're doing. And we then kind of spend little time to show them what we've done so far. There's another angle to it. If we are actually partnering with knowledge partners and we build things with them, we've created these partnerships. Instead of talking about the fact that we are partnering, we are kind of building collaborations, if we show what that collaboration looks like and make that your main hero, make that your hook, while it may not do justice to all the work you're doing as an organization, it gives a glimpse into something deeper. Now, think about it from a funder perspective. They're looking at decks day in, day out. They're looking at projects and programs day in, day out. Everyone focuses on talking about their model, their theory of change, the triangle, and the long-term, short-term game plan, etc. It's a lot of strategy talk, but sometimes it's nice and refreshing to just explain your model, explain your program without explaining your program, but just showing the work and hoping that the work is powerful enough for them to put two and two together, understand your program, even if they don't get the entire programs, like the entirety of the work you're doing, they start connecting with the actual input and output of your work. And that connection will want them to know more about you, more about, tell me everything you're doing now. So our concern's always that no, we actually do all these things. It's a 360 approach. We collaborate, we build partnerships, we build capacity, everything. But maybe one hook and just diving deep into that. So because you brought up like knowledge partners, I'm curious about what you do with knowledge partners. Give me a vibe, like give me a feel for what that work is. Even if it's a scrappy little product, a knowledge product that is going, it's working on ground. We've rolled it out now. It's printed on black and white. That's fine. That's exciting. That's exciting for a funder to hear about because that's actual tactile information versus we are working on material design. We're working on contextualizing, hyper-localizing content. That's a strategy. But show me that hyper-local content. What is that knowledge product? And that could actually help you leverage your funders to get more engaged with your work. It's not a direct answer to your question, but I'm just suggesting this is how we could leverage our work with funders instead of talking more about how we work, talking about what we're really doing right now. And that need not mean you need to have success metrics. You don't need to show that we have succeeded. We just want to show our work first and let them decide is that a success or not. I'm going to take one more question before we wrap this session up. I would love for someone to kind of throw something that they're really keen to kind of figure out. If not, no pressure. I'm going to take the question from the chat. Most CSRs are looking for implementation partners within a 50 to 100 kilometer radius. How to be attractive in a semi... Sorry? Was someone saying something? Was it Hema?
Yes, sir. Sorry to interrupt. So sorry
No
to
problem.
interrupt.
Go for it. Go for it.
Should I ask a question, sir?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to start my camera.
No problem.
Because I'm on way back from my office.
That's
actually, I just want to ask that we are a grassroots level organization, and we are working in limited geographies, geographical area. So we do not have reach to most of the funders who are, who are looking for. Because our main preference area is rural areas. We are working majorly in rural areas in MP region. So how can we, as a grassroots NGO or grassroots level small organization, how can we approach to potential partners, potential donors, or potential funders who want to invest in our areas? Is there any way we can reach out to them or we can find them? Because what happens, like if I make proposals for like HCL, or any big programs, then obviously they are not being selected, because this is my experience.
Okay.
Many times it happens that we prepare deck and proposals, etc. We do all the hard work, and at the end it does not get fulfilled.
Okay.
Because due to our geographical area, or due to our financial constraints.
Hema, I have a question for you. I have a question. Are you sure it's because of your geographical area and nothing else? Have you like checked that, or is that something you're guessing?
No, sir. I think that it can be one of the reasons.
Okay. Yeah, because so the one reason I'm sharing that is because if I had to start, if I was working with you right now, my first question would be, can we find out what is the challenge and how do we navigate? So, because we might be assuming that our geographical area, as in, I'm not saying, as in, I'm sure there is a criteria for a lot of people to pick certain regions, but certain times your pitch might be falling short in a very different context, where if the topic area might not be aligned with whoever you're applying for the grant for, it may not be the geographical area. That I'm not saying it is not, I'm just saying it may not be. So one quick suggestion, which is not going to completely answer this, Hema, is if you have even 1 or 2 members who you're still in touch with, but who hasn't kind of given you the grant or the funding, if you can find out from them on was geographical area the cause, and if yes, if they are saying that, if you can ask them what would drive them, even if the geography is rural area. The reason I'm asking that is because recently when I've been speaking to certain like foundations, funders, etc., certain people are focused on not looking at urban cities. They are looking at rural areas because they want to allocate funds mainly for those areas. So the big question is, how do we make them meet you? So that that's the challenge. Now, how to make them meet is something we're also trying to figure out, but I don't have an answer for that right now, but I'm going to think about that piece. But I'm just letting you know that it's not a rule that they will not want rural area. So if we can find out, if you can also find out what was the reason why certain places got rejected, if you can find out, that would be a nice starting point, because then you can actually rule it out. If sometimes it might not be the geographical area, and that could help you.
Yeah, okay.
It's a half answer. I know I'm not giving a full answer. I'm going to think about how the connection can be formed. There are certain foundations who I already have in network. Maybe we can figure out a way. And Satwa also has a lot of connections with like certain foundations and investors. So maybe that could help.
Very, very thank you for your guidance, sir. But I think, sir, that there is a problem of what we can say lack of information or lack of resources, which we are not able to get or get through. So is there any, if you could guide on, is there any sources which we can approach, or as you guided on that there are conferences happening which we can in an earlier question also so is there any platforms or online platforms or offline or any training and capacity building programs for grassroots NGOs or networking platform for grassroots NGOs which we can approach to? Maybe not now, maybe later
I'm
on.
thinking there's one which I was regardless going to talk to you guys about really quickly, which is our conference, but that's more around communications and not necessarily connecting to a funder. It's how we pitch to a funder. But regardless, in addition to that, Hema, I will look up if there are any other kind of spaces that you could consider looking at. That would be interesting. I will find that out. And if I can have some access, I'll share that as well, for sure.
Sure, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I wanted to take 1 minute before you guys all wrap up. If you guys actually found this interesting, we're regardless having more chats like this. There's one more open session lined up for, I think, 2 weeks from now. There's another cool session on impact documentation next week. You guys should definitely show up for that. I'm going to take that. It'll be fun. A quick one, what you're looking at right now is something called a submarine conference. You can look it up online. It's studiosubu.com/submarine. And it's basically a conference where we kind of do a deep dive into all these communication aspects of fundraising, partnership building, recruitment. It's a 3-day, kind of a full day boot camp kind of a thing. And we usually limit it to about 20 organizations. So our next submarine, this is like season 6. It's lined up for October, mid-October. So you should check it out if you want to kind of brainstorm on. We do a lot of simulations, workshops, and stuff like that to kind of hack out like how we can kind of help organizations. So we've had like 5 of them so far. Something that you might find interesting. Also, Satwa has a portal online. If you can just share that right now, if everyone can just access that, there's a really killer portal where we as a studio are also going to be sharing a lot more information, ready to use free downloadable documents on reading materials, etc., which could come handy. It's a free portal. Sorry, you guys can carry this on. It's like really cool. You can sign up. There's a lot of event updation, everything that happens on the portal. So you can go ahead and talk a little bit more about that. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Harish. And thank you all for joining in. Maybe I'll just take a minute to also introduce our platform. So this is a Satwa initiative. We've been working on it for the last almost 12 to 18 months, but we recently launched it through our social media as well. It's called the India Partner Network. And as Harish said, there are quite a few things that we have as a part of the platform, right? So one, I'd just like to mention that this is a free platform. There is no sort of fee to register on the platform. And as a part of this, we have several, as a member of the platform, one, definitely you all will have access to a lot of knowledge and events and webinars. So the events that we hold from Satwa's side, we will be putting it up through the platform now and route all registrations to this as well. So it's super easy sign up process. It's just a 3-step process to register, post which all will be notified. So any new event that comes up will directly land at your inbox. So you would be notified. Also, as a part of it, we have news and updates. So anything happening within the ecosystem, we will be having a news and update section wherein you all can come. And this news and updates would cover a lot of other conferences, events happening in the ecosystem, not just Satwa related. Donor visibility, donor connect is also something we have. So here, Satwa today works with an extensive network of donors. So what we mean by donor connects is not directly connecting to the donor, but once you log in and fill in your profile information up to a certain level, all of our internal teams who actually regularly connect with our donors, your discoverability to these internal teams would increase. And moment you fill in your information gets stored. So when there's a potential opportunity in the future to collaborate or just sort of any funding opportunity from the side of the donor, our internal teams will look into all of your information and then make the relevant matchmaking. So would actually highly recommend all of you all to come in. We will be sharing the link and more information regarding our platform with all of you in an email, as well as I think the submarine conference that Harish spoke about. So all of these will be coming in an emailer, but our events, as you all can see, it's going to be put up this way. Our next one is on capturing and showcasing qualitative impact. This is also going to be with Studio Subu, and as Harish said, he will be anchoring it. The registration for this is yet to open. We will be opening that in the coming week. And the resources as well. We have put it up. So different institution building areas, if you all can see on the left, we have it around fundraising, marketing, branding, donor readiness. There are almost 75 plus resources that we have put up on the platform. And each of them were also broken down into further topics and subtopics. So marketing, branding, resources, and others. We have a lot of interesting ones around fundraising as well. So donor outreach, acquisition, pitching, list of potential funding sources. So you'll just have to log in for this, and then you all will be able to view as well as download the resource for your own use. So just wanted to take you all through the platform once. We will definitely be sharing more information about this. And in case you'll have any trouble signing up, then please feel free to reach out to us and we'd be happy to handhold you through the entire signing up process. But once again, thank you all. We'll also be circulating a feedback form. This is the first time we're holding such an open house session. If you all find it interesting, happy to hold more such sessions so that you all can come in with your questions and we can answer them. But thank you once again. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great weekend. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.